Hello, welcome back from the coffee break. I hope everybody had some nice refreshment. Before I introduce our panel guests, just wanted to say a little bit about why we're having this panel today. I think for those of you that have been coming to Dell Technologies Forum or Dell EMC Forum in the past years, are usually expecting some fairly product or strategy keynotes in the morning. But I thought this year we'll do something a little bit different. We wanted to introduce other aspects of Dell Technologies as a company in terms of what is important to us, in terms of our DNA, and also in terms of our culture as well. Now, within Dell Technologies, the notion of D&I, which is diversity and inclusion, is a very important topic. We practice it in all of our major jurisdictions, in all of our offices. And we continue to embrace that as a major way for us to grow the company as well as working with our customers as well. So today I'm very privileged to have two senior business leaders, one from the banking industry and one from the marketing and advertising industry, to share some of their thoughts in this very important topic. And please give them a round of applause. Thank you very much. So I think before we start, maybe the two of you can do a very quick introduction about what you do within HSBC and iClick, just so that the audience have some more familiarity in terms of your responsibilities.
Sure, Sean. Thank you. My name is Christy Pang. I look after the technology, media, and telecom sector clients for HSBC's commercial bank. So unlike what you would imagine for a traditional commercial bank, HSBC actually covers startups from pre-Series A all the way to tech giants, listed companies like iClick. Actually, iClick is one of our clients. And we have the privilege of looking after these clients throughout their life cycle. From equity financing to debt financing to listings and everything in between. That's what we do on a daily basis. So that's my role.
Excellent. Thank you.
Thanks, Sean. Good morning, everyone. My name is Christina. I am working as the Business Development Director at iClick. So iClick is actually not just a marketing and advertising company. We're actually more positioning ourselves as the ad tech and mark tech a company, so the technology part of it. That's why I'm here today. So our role is really to help international and also Hong Kong clients, a lot of them from FMCG, from different industries, F&B, and also hospitality, retail, travel, etc., to reach Chinese audience through digital. So how to reach digital China.
Great, excellent. Okay, so just to give you a preview in terms of what we're going to be talking about. Obviously, as you can see from the title, the major topic is really around women in tech or women in industry in general. I think we still live in a world that is fairly male-dominated. We are seeing a increasing trend in the area of diversity, as I mentioned before. So we'll certainly ask the two business leaders here to share a little bit about their experience within their organizations and also within the partner and customer ecosystem that you see in this area. And then we're going to take a slight detour, not detour, but another direction and cover a little bit about some of the social trends that we're seeing in the market as well. I think Danny and Elvin covered quite a bit about digital transformation this morning, and also obviously from a customer perspective as well. And very often we are now, our businesses are serving the next generation and the generation after that. And that generation is increasingly more digital. In fact, I think that generation probably don't even think about it as digital because it's part of their DNA anyways, right? We think mobile, we talk about these words like it's new, but to them it's nothing new. So how do we transform the companies and then how do we cater to that customer segment becomes quite important. So those are some of the topics that we'll be discussing today. So let's start with women in tech or financing or marketing or So, Christy, when we were talking about this strategizing on this panel, you mentioned there are quite a bit that the bank is doing in this area. I think you mentioned you're part of a balance committee. Can you maybe explain a little bit about that?
Yeah, Sure, Sean. Actually, before we start on the boring topic of HSBC and our social corporate responsibilities, just looking around the room today, we were trying to think about whether there is at least 30% female in the audience. And I'm very proud to say that I think the colleagues that I've brought here today are all female, which includes our venture capital coverage team, as well as our relationship team that covers all of the TMT names. So I think I have contributed to about half of the female audience here today.
Thank you.
So we'll need to do something about that next year. But I think for multinational corporates, as well as local enterprises, we do see ourselves as setting an example. So not talking about the female entrepreneurs that I already know, but even within established traditional businesses like banking, we do have a responsibility to set an example to promote the female leadership, and also to seek the alliance of what we call male allies. So within companies like HSBC, we have a group, Global Balance Committee, that actively recruits male allies. And what that means is just to help in the senior executive dialogues to promote the upcoming rising female talent within the bank. And that has served us very well, because the female and the male executives and female and male audiences bring different aspects to the table. And as you alluded to, understanding the market and the social trends means understanding both sides of the coin, what both males and females are looking for. So when I think about the TMT sector in particular, I was talking to Sean, we were brainstorming about, who are the representative female entrepreneurs. We don't want to talk about the Yahoo CEO anymore. So even within Hong Kong and Greater China, we see a lot of female entrepreneurs. They're the likes of Michelle Sun, that started the First Code Academy in Hong Kong, a coding school for K-12 students. There's also the likes of Yoni Fok, who started Spark Raise, which is a crowdfunding sort of tech platform. There's also Viola Lam that founded Find Solution AI, which includes a key product, 4 Little Trees, that is also targeting the K-12 education space. So even just within technology itself, there's a connection that I think female entrepreneurs can make between tech and the society and next generation that is key to the entire ecosystem. EdTech being one of the key, subsegments.
Right. So Christina, we were talking about this earlier as well, and I think we were talking about design thinking and having empathy, and the notion that the kind of the female leadership and the female participation really brings a very different dimension as part of it. Maybe there's something you can share in that regard as well.
Yes, absolutely. So in our company, as an ad tech company, the male-female ratio is actually not that bad. Maybe not as much as 50-50%, but I'm actually quite proud to say that for our product team, the majority of them are actually female. So why is that? Because their role is really to connect the technology side, which is full of all the jargons and terminologies, a little bit difficult for laymen or traditional industry leaders to understand, to communicate and translate that into business sense and talk to our clients, which would be mostly traditional clients, from the luxury sector, etc. They sell very expensive bags, but they haven't really started the digital transformation yet. They started looking to it, but in order to help them understand what the digital solution can bring them in the commercial sense, or how they can implement them with the existing team, we do need a more kind of human touch to bring this technology solution into practice.
And are you, in the customers that your company works with, are you seeing almost a pattern that mimics that working relationship and trying to introduce that dimension as part of the co-working teams as well? Are you seeing that with the customer that you're working with?
Yes. So usually, with the customers that we work with, very typically, they have like this tech team mostly male, and the market team would be mostly female, some male in there. So really, what we're trying to do is to fill the gap, right? How the technology side is actually not that scary. It's not that undesirable. How we can help them to bring, use technology to drive the business and data-driven solutions, etc.
Great. So maybe pass back to Christy as well. So with a bank like HSBC, right? You would think about them as a traditional, very large global enterprise. When you're going through these diversity and inclusion initiative, are you seeing any embracement in terms of that concept within the bank? Is that widely adopted across different business units and in different countries as well?
Yeah, sure. Just speaking from the banking industry, it's all mainly about relationships, right? So you need to be able to connect with people, you need to get your message across, you need to have a long-term trusting relationship with clients. So actually, when you talk about frontline banking, you do see quite a large representation, sometimes even more than 50% that are female bankers nowadays. I think that's not where we stop. From the bank's perspective, and what the Balance Committee is looking to do, is really looking at elevating talent, whether female or male, and accelerating their career paths so that they can actually get to the senior executive or board levels. So globally, I think MNCs are held to accountability for female proportions in the management board makeup. So for example, in HSBC, we are part of the 30% group. So your board makeup do need to have at least 30% female representation. And that's not to say that we stop there either. I think it is more that there needs to be a recognition that females and males bring different but equally important messages to the board. I think that is ultimately what balance means, rather than anything in the affirmative sense or anything to do with a hard-coded percentage. It is really to have both sides of the message being brought to the table. And I think in the tech and particularly ed tech space, messaging is so important. You have to be relevant to your customer. You have to connect very quickly, especially when we talk about the Gen Zs or the post-95 crowd. You need to make that connection within 8 seconds because we've all lost them. They've ignored us after the first 8 seconds of this panel. And so that connection, that human connection, that individual message needs to come across that quickly. And I think, that brings the female sensitivity onto the table and the empathy onto the table.
So let's talk a little bit about the Gen Z that you brought up. I think it's interesting that you're bringing up because Christy and I were actually involved in a MIT research exercise recently. And it was to look at the advertising or the buying patterns for Gen Z or iGen. There's so many names for them now. And in general, I think the age group was 14 to 24, right? Or somewhere around there. So that's a pretty big range, but it obviously represents the younger generation in terms of trying to understand what they would prefer and how they would look at a certain brand these days. And I think the 8 seconds that you mentioned was, to me, was quite astounding because if you think about creating something and you're trying to blast it out as part of your brand, and if they only spend 8 seconds looking at it, and then if you don't catch their attention and they walk away, then you've wasted a lot of time, right? Time and effort. So I thought that was quite interesting. I know your team have done some additional research in that area as well. Maybe you can share a bit about that.
Sure, I'll just do that very quickly because obviously we have the market practitioner here that talk about how to capture attention. So I'm proud to say that I am not the one that did the research. Actually, we found several Gen Z team members to do the research so that we're not biased. So this is genuinely what they found. So in essence, about 30% of the global population is going to be in that Gen Z category by 2020. In Greater China area, particularly in Hong Kong, It's roughly 20%. So it is a very sizable part of the population. They have a very unique upbringing whereby they are exposed to a multiplicity of platforms since the day they were born. So, if we think, we use Facebook and Instagram and you're already overwhelmed. No, they are using Facebook, Instagram, Snapchat, WeChat, ByteDance, all TikTok, everything that is available out there. And, just on one platform alone, typically there's about 100 million shares of pictures and videos a day. So how do you capture their attention and what are they looking for is going to be very critical to the likes of retailers, traditional consumer brands, F&B companies, anyone that has to do with connecting a product to the core values of a human being. So maybe perhaps, from iClick's perspective, Christina might have some concrete examples of how that plays out.
Thank you, Christy. So you mentioned a lot about Facebook, IG, WeChat, right? So in a Hong Kong space or like a Western space, it's still a little bit easier because we're talking about Facebook, Instagram, Snapchat, YouTube, all right? Pretty much that's it. But if you look at Greater China, mainland China in particular, the space, the social media space is so much more diverse. So we are talking about, you can have e-commerce portals with social media bundled in it. So or the Tmall, they have live streaming, right? When you buy something, you actually want to check out what this host is want to sell you before you make a decision. You have a lot of short video portals, TikTok, Douyin be one of them, and also you have Douyu, a lot of other live streaming short video portals. Red, Xiaohongshu is super hot right now. You have Bilibili, you have Agen, like a lot of all these portals. On average, in mainland China, one Gen Z, person would follow 10 KOLs, what we say, right? Key opinion leaders across all these platforms. And the attention span is so short. Now the question to the brands would be, how do we capture the attention and convert and to kind of convey the brand value to all these customers? What we are trying to do right now is to capture, to do like an omni-channel, omni-platform, cross-platform kind of a marketing exercise, gather all these attention, find out your audience, your target audience of these Gen Zs, and then get the data, because we are all talking about, after all, it's all about big data and how we deploy it. Find out the union ID of all these data that you come from, and then do data analysis behind it. After that, you have data insights to drive your next marketing decision, and then you do another round of marketing exercise. You collect more data, enrich your DMP, and then make the entire process better.
So does that mean you're more so seeing a lot of the traditional brick and mortar companies that would be advertising in a certain way for quite a while now, really abandoning a lot of the traditional way of doing and then really converting very rapidly onto the other side? Because I think one of the speakers this morning mentioned that if you don't do it, you may not survive, or you may not be around anymore. Are you seeing that in China? I think the answer would be yes. But are you seeing that in Hong Kong as well, specifically to this market?
In Hong Kong, there are still a lot of marketing or advertising budgets that sits with outdoor, right? OOH. You see a big billboard and you have the brand awareness and that's it. I think the trend right now is really how to, I'm not saying that outdoor is no longer useful, it still has its big market value in there. But what we need to contemplate, and I think China has been really advancing really fast, is to bring a true OTO, right? Online to offline and then offline back to online. And how do we close the loop would be a key kind of question. A lot of the time, marketing, brands, they have so many different divisions, and each of these divisions or departments would do their own marketing exercise, kind of silo, different kind of data. There's no leverage on it, no synergy. What we see China doing is to kind of create an ecosystem where you have offline events, you have brand presence in multiple social media channels to get different followers. You also have advertising campaigns to capture untapped users in the blue ocean. And then how do we use this ecosystem to engage one another? So online users don't need to stay online all the time. They can also engage them through your offline sales activities or events. And all those offline audience, how do you bring them back to online to become for example, your loyal customers, etc. So this would be the loop that I see is where the brand should go, for the latest trend.
Right, so connecting online and offline,
Yes,
and then back and forth, right? And obviously in the banking industry, we see that a lot, right? So, I think a few years ago, everybody was saying branches is an old thing. Everybody's going to be doing all their banking on the phone. So redirecting all the efforts in that area, and I think probably the last year or so, people are starting to realize that's really not the case, right? It's a physical asset. There's a lot of value in having that people interaction, the frontline managers talking to the customer, and then obviously there's the digital experience where you can tie things in there as well. And obviously within HSBC specifically, there's quite a bit of work in that area. Now, from your business, you're within the commercial bank, and you're looking after TMT. So are there any interesting companies or capabilities that you've seen in your line of work that kind of map into specifically what Christina's talking about, tying this online and offline experience together?
I think B2B tech is something that is a must nowadays. So whether you're a real estate developer looking to fill your mall with branded shops, or whether you're an e-commerce company that is trying to link overseas vendors to onshore consumers, you cannot get around the fact that you need data, like Christina has mentioned. So we've seen AI companies that developed into prop tech companies. So what they do is, there's a subsegment within tech that intelligently monitors who comes into the mall and finds out how long each person stands in front of a particular brand. And through, joined up CRM systems or joint up loyalty programs, they are then able to target consumers when they go back home or when they get on their phones and they open up a live streaming app or a video streaming app, and they see their favorite KOL or their favorite actress wearing the dress that they've just saw in a physical mall. So that is sort of how connected the world is going to be, both from an offline to an online to an offline experience. So we see that as a trend. And I think, from AI to supercomputing to data analytics, those B2B tech companies are going to form the backbone of the future of some of these brick and mortar traditional industries. That's inescapable. So that's one key trend. The other thing that I do want to touch on, especially when we're talking about especially the Gen Z population and the post-95s, is that because of the multiple platforms that they're exposed to, they are very keen to feel connected one-on-one with individuals. So the whole KOL experience allows them to feel as if they are having a one-on-one interaction with someone famous. If you think about it, when in the good old days, when we buy Adidas sneakers because Michael Jordan is wearing them, you don't need to talk to Michael Jordan to know that the sneakers are great.
That sounds so sad, the good old days of Michael Jordan. The guy is still alive. And we're talking about good old days.
Those were good days. But nowadays, you need to be able to talk to the person that is wearing the sneakers, or you need to feel a certain connection with the person. And if you don't have that connection, then 8 seconds is all you get to try to tell them how great your pair of sneakers are. But if, say, for example, you look at ethical, socially responsible companies, even in the retail space. VJ Sneakers is a very good example. They became very famous because the Duchess of Sussex started wearing VJ sneakers and posting it on Instagram and Twitter about how they use reclaimed plastic beads from the ocean to make sort of the plastic parts of the sneakers. And so that, the Duchess of Sussex, clearly, a KOL, an online digital platform, multi-platforms that can reach the audience, and a very unique ethical message that comes across and connects with the individual so that the individual feels that it is then connected to a greater good, i.e., environmental protection. And so that is a very, ad hoc but successful advertising campaign for the sneakers brand. Right. And so that's a very good example of something where how to capture someone's attention when they only have 8 seconds, when they have multiple platforms, they feel disconnected and lonely, but they want to have that connection through a purchase.
Right. Maybe, Danny, I think we should do something, talk a little bit more about some of the ocean-bound plastic initiative that we do within Dell. We probably don't even advertise it enough. Anyways, not for today. But I wanted to go. Okay. Yeah, well, next time we'll add another chair here and she can definitely join the panel. So I want to go back a little bit to one point that you mentioned earlier about looking at the malls, right, the online and offline experience, and people looking at how long they're staying in front of a advertisement or a brand, and trying to gather that data to determine what can be promoted to them. Maybe Christina, you can help with this. When we talk about social and social media and data gathering, the topic of surveillance and privacy always comes up, right? So in your line of work, how do you deal with that when questions comes up from kind of your customer in terms of where's the line in terms of how much to gather and how much to use that is proper and still acceptable, especially for the younger and the newer generation?
I actually get asked this question a lot, right? Because especially we're dealing with the China media. When especially international brands hearing that, we are going to work with a Tencent solution or whatnot, they're really scared, right? Oh, I'm not going to disclose my customers' data to Tencent, or it's China media, kind of. They don't know what it is. But to tell you a fact is that the China advertising law is actually very strict. They have very, very detailed kind of customer protection on the personal level of data. So when we provide our solutions, sometimes the clients say, okay, where do my data go, right? You help me, use your advertising solution, get the users, but would Tencent know all of my customer data? Where does it sit? So usually the answer would be you can, the customers, depending on their business scales and setup, they can either use a cloud solution, or they can deploy their own kind of a server to have all the data sit in there. And when we do advertising, we always use anonymous data. So it's still big data. We profile all those audience into what they like, what they search, what they browse about, etc. It's huge, the data set, but we do not name it. This cookie belongs to Christy Pan, right? And she has visited this website and that website, right? But no, we profile individual customers, but we only look at it in a pool of audience, so that we wouldn't be, pointing out at, this person is doing what and that.
So maybe you can touch a little bit about the technology aspect of that process as well. You mentioned there are a lot of these different market channels, right? So WeChat and so on and so forth, but they don't operate in a cohesive way. So as a marketing or advertising company, what do you do to bring that together, right? Because you're facing a customer. We keep pointing to Christy, but okay, Christy is the customer, but she's using multiple channels. How do you bring that together? And what are some of the capabilities that you're seeing out there or you guys are using as well to be able to enable that?
You give me a lot of commercial time.
I know. We have a tech audience, so we do have to cover the tech part.
Okay. So it's not just about iClick solution, but in general, how we track each user's behavior, how we identify one single user across different platforms is we use what we call ad tracking, right? So when we do a campaign, we don't just throw 100K into a campaign and just blast out all the banners and that's it. We track who would actually get to see the banner, click on the banner. Does this person actually land on the landing page? Would this person have further engagement looking at different product pages and eventually, let's say, go to to check out certain products that they put into the cart, etc. And by that, we would be able to, of course, you have to have like a CRM and like a data analytic platform that sits behind and analyze across time with this single user. After they become your paid customers, engage in different activities or events that you invite them, and then look at the lifetime value, how you would be able to expand them through different activities. For example, engaging them on different, could be events, could be social media, etc.
So I think in this area we talked about kind of the trends that have changed, the customer segment, the age group obviously have changed, the preferences have changed, and also obviously the approaches got to be changing alongside with it as well. Maybe going back a little bit, so we talk about technology and we talk about the ecosystem. You and I talked about this earlier. For a lot of these startups that are really focusing in these areas, they can't just have the tech aspect. They got to have the entire arsenal of assistance as well. And obviously financing is one of them. So you work for a bank. What are some of the things that you see would be important in those areas to kind of help out these new startups?
Within banking traditionally, we look at balance sheets and cash flow. And that doesn't really translate when you look at a tech company and the growth story that they are trying to portray. So that's a given, and we acknowledge that.
Especially social media-based companies, right?
Especially
that. Number of users, but no monetization. You're like, huh? That doesn't make any sense, but that's how things are valued these days.
Yes. And so there needs to be a different lens when we look at companies like this. So, within HSBC, we have what we call a tech fund, or we also brand it as a Greater Bay Area Fund, a GBA fund, which is lending on a debt level. It's not a VC fund or an equity fund. Senior unsecured lending, that is totaling $880 million US. And we deploy it to various different tech companies, and we sort of look at them through the lens of growth and whether they're hitting the subsegments correctly within tech. So we talked about AI, data analytics. We talked about B2B tech that is going to be the future infrastructure of society. So those are the key winners that we think are going to come out of the whole innovation and innovative industries. We also take a look at e-commerce platform players that are able to then translate B2C. We are also focused on certain areas where the Hong Kong government, as well as the Greater Bay Area entrepreneurs and incubators, are also focusing on. For example, health tech and biotech, wearable tech, and what we call, sometimes it's called esports, sometimes it's called digital entertainment, but basically that includes the streaming of live videos as well as online gaming companies, so video games, etc. So take video games, for example. That's a very good subsegment where you cannot look at you cannot even look at the historical figures of the company from its past month's revenues, because it actually has real-time player information, both whether it is a paying player, a non-playing player, a repeated player, how long has that player been playing this game, how much would the player's account be valued in the open market if it were to sell the player's account. So all of those data points are completely non-traditional. And therefore, when we make the financing decision or banking, sort of the debt financing decision on those companies, we rely on platforms like Stream to monitor how many players are using that particular digital entertainment company, and how much repeated business it is getting, and how much paying business it is getting. So all of those new data points that are beyond the typical break-even net profits, tangible net worth that you can get from an auditor's financials is what we're taking into account when we look at financing these companies. So I think that's one thing that HSBC is doing very proactively in this space. Separately, we do have a lot of traditional banking products that are relevant to tech companies. For example, if you think about your corporate card, it's usually your corporate cards for any Hong Kong enterprises are issued by HSBC or Standard Chartered or Amex. If you're considered quite advanced if you have an Amex card for corporate.
Really?
For corporate.
Really?
Because you can get miles. But actually, for TMT companies, there's a lot of additional working capital payments that they need to make to the likes of Microsoft, AWS, Google, Facebook, to purchase, ad spaces, ad units, marketing units that they pay on a very fixed time frame. So you get a payment term from Facebook and Google, and you don't know that actually you can use a corporate card to pay for it as a tech company. So that's another area that HSBC is looking at financing as well. Transforming what you call the typical working capital cycle or trade financing into terms that tech companies can understand. That's what we do in the TMT sector.
Right. Okay. Wow. Very good. Thank you. I never thought.
Thank you for the advertising time, by the way.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, thank you for being on stage, both of you. I never thought having an Amex was actually a advanced product. That's surprising to me. So I think we have just a little bit of time left on our panel. Maybe some parting thoughts, Christina, in terms of what we talked about today, some of the things that you want to share with the audience. A little advertising time for you as well. Totally okay?
Well, I think maybe one more example that I want to kind of share with the audience today. We talk about O2O, right? So one very hot topic in ad tech and more in mainland China, and we are seeing that Hong Kong clients are actually asking us, how can we leverage on the Greater Bay Area initiative of the government and get more customers from that area, Shenzhen, Guangzhou area, to come to Hong Kong and visit them, and how do they further engage them? This could be international brands, cosmetics and beauty. They receive a lot of, maybe not so much this month, but usually they receive a lot of mainland Chinese customers to their shop, but how do they further engage them instead of just letting them, come buy one thing and then go. So one kind of a trend that we see the Hong Kong and also Greater Bay Area is adopting. Mainland China already very mature would be using the entire WeChat ecosystem. There is a WeChat work platform, kind of like an HR structure, where you can give this ability to your salesperson of different branch. So in order to do that, you are making B2B2C kind of successful. From the brand to the salesperson to the end consumers. And within the WeChat ecosystem, after the salesperson connect with an end user, me as a salesperson can feed you with a lot of shop information, new product information, etc. And at the same time, the brand on the back end would be able to see the engagement of all these customers real time, right? In the past, this would be impossible because it's just happened in the physical world, each time how they interact with the customers. But now, utilizing WeChat, the salesperson no longer can interact with the customers outside of the shop operating hours, but also encouraging sales online. And this customer can go pick up the product back to the store or whatnot. So we are seeing this O2O kind of approach more and more mature, especially with the data-driven layer at the back.
Yeah, when they say technology is moving at light speed, it's literally moving at light speed, especially in this part of the world. It's really amazing to see. So we literally have 15 seconds left, 16. Why is the number going up? That's very strange. I think that means we're over time. That's why the number's going up. Okay, we're over by 26 seconds now. Well, please help me in thanking our two business leaders on stage and sharing some insightful experience around this area. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Sean and the panelists. Please have a photo together on stage, and we'll have a photographer ready.